Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and I want to talk about the layers that a Dungeons and Dragons player encounters before they encounter a specifically before they encounter a a the layer that we acknowledge as the game, right? Very interesting. So, what is that layer, right? So basically, there's a debate. I actually don't think that Dungeons and Dragons is a game. I don't. I think Gary Gygax built something much larger than a game. He built essentially a human improvement engine, but many people interact with Dungeons and Dragons as a game, and many people refer to Dungeons and Dragons as a game and interact with it as such, right? But I'm trying to get to kind of guide you guys to see what I'm saying. And so one of the things I wanted to do was look at all the layers that a Dungeons and Dragons player encounters before they reach the game layer of Dungeons and Dragons. So we've talked about the history layer, we've talked about the reputation layer. Today I want to talk about the table layer, the table, right? It's a layer of Dungeons and Dragons. A Dungeons and Dragons player, I call Dungeons and Dragons players Dragon Masters. When I say Dragon Master, I mean Dungeons and Dragons player. So these Dragon Masters, they sit down with the Dungeon Master, and they immediately begin to interact, with Dungeons and Dragons. They first encounter the history, next they encounter the reputation, and then they encounter the table. So what do I mean by the table, and how is this distinct from the air quotes game layer, right? It's a very good question. So the table is pretty incredible. So let me talk about my table, right? So when my players show up and sit down for Dungeons and Dragons, what are they encountering? Well, first of all, let's talk about the table. It is a 75-year-old table that my grandmother gave my mother when the table is 75 years old. Um, but I'm not. So the table predates me. But my grandmother gave it to my mother when I was born, right? And that there's a lot of Garibay family history at that table. We've had it forever, right? It's really, it's got some notches in it. It's seen some things, right? It's pretty incredible. So that is the table, right? And it has, it sits six people, right? 5 Dragon Masters, 1 Dungeon Master, right? Very distinct and very unique, right? And when they come into my home, they sit at this table, right? It's got, and the chairs, me and my wife bought these chairs for like $75 a piece years ago, and they'll probably have to get replaced a couple of years from now, right? And but they're like metal, right? So that everybody, metal with upholstery, like what you would find in a hotel conference room, they're nice, right? And we invested the money so that every Dragon Master and myself as the Dungeon Master, that we're comfortable, right? And but also it's in my home, right? So, and that means it's more quiet than some other games are. And there's an entire room that is dedicated to this, and it's on my first floor. It's literally in my dining room. It is my dining room table, right? And and not only that, but there's a tradition in my house that everybody, are the Dungeons and Dragons players show up. Everybody in the house just goes about their business, but they do it with headphones on, right? Giving us quiet for, there'll be somebody in the living room playing PlayStation, but they'll have the headphones on, right? And there's quiet in the house for the game, right? But there are also people in the house who are not playing Dungeons and Dragons. There's always water in the bottled water in the fridge, diet soda in the fridge, um, pretzel sticks, right? Um, and also, like, I'm like anything sealed, so like you can grab a yogurt, right? It's a different, it's unique, it's different, it's welcoming. We worked very hard to build this space, right? And so right? So another buddy of mine, one of my players, actually graduated to being a full-on, fully engaged, fully skilled dungeon master, right? He was my player for years. He runs in an FLGS, right? And the nice thing is, he actually has 6 or 7 or even 8 players at the table, right? So he can seat more because the table is literally larger, right? He's playing at tables that were designed to get in as many Magic the Gathering tournament people, and he plays on a. But his game is going to get canceled, right? On if there's a Disney Lorcana tournament that night, and so they'll have to either go next week or pick a different night of the week. The other thing is, he will have players drop in and drop out based on what's actually happening in the shop, right? So there's so many tournaments and so many different games going on that he'll lose a player here, or he'll gain a player because because the person they were supposed to play Heat the board game didn't show, right? And his table is louder. They have to deal with more, but they can also buy Milky Way, and they can buy, like as many whatever soda they want, because they're like the places. It's a game store with lots of snacks and drinks for sale, right? And they could go and get pizza across the street and take a break in the middle of, play for 2 hours, take a 15-minute break, and then do another hour and a half, right? And so their table is very different than mine. And other Dragon Masters, right? They may only Dragon Masters may only be playing when they go to PAX Unplugged or when they go to Gen Con, right? And that's literally all their play for the year, right? And so and those tables, right, that is a public space in the middle of a gigantic hall, right? And and that period of time is cut out of that convention, right? And it's really, people are going to come up and greet that player and say, "Oh, hey, how you doing? I just got done with my seeing Ginny D, like at the table," and say, "Well, we'll catch up with you when you're done with it." These tables are very different, right? But the table situation is completely unique, and it's very much independent of this game layer, because the game layer, and this is my point, is like Dungeons and Dragons is so unique and so special, right, that the game layer is layers and layers and layers down. So we've talked about history, we've talked about reputation, we've talked about the table, and we're not even close yet to the actual to the game layer. So I want to talk about that, the game layer. So we'll get there. I appreciate your going on this journey with me. Thank you very much for letting me share this with you. Please consider liking, subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.